I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the leadership journey of our guest and what unique traits bring them to be the leader they are today. Who knows what we're going to discover together, so I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I am absolutely chuffed to bits to have Lauren Hughes with me today, who we met, I think it's got to be a couple of years ago now, through some magnificent networking, which you will get to learn a bit more about shortly. And we've become fast friends. Is that about right, Lauren?
I think you've pretty much nailed it there. Yeah, definitely. I wasn't entirely sure how we met. I couldn't actually remember because I feel like you just sort of assimilate people through the online world these days, don't you? But yeah, I think Nat might have introduced us.
Who, Natalie?
Yes.
Yeah. But was it Leslie, or did I bring? No, I think I brought Leslie in. So yeah, it probably was Natalie.
See what I mean? Like you can't
remember.
I'll tell you what, it doesn't really matter because the right people find the right people.
Yes, I'm a strong believer of that. Now, just to give you the appropriate introduction, you are the founder and fearless leader of the Affinity community for empathetic women. I hope I've introduced that properly, but also multi-talented, amazing wedding photographer, brand photographer, and all sorts of things. I think it's safe to say that you turn your hand to some most creative things that always turn out beautifully, Lauren. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to the podcast today.
Thank you so much. You made me sound very impressive.
You are. You really are.
Thank you. I'll receive that with gratitude. Thank you.
Please do. And may I say, as always, you've got the most fantastic pair of earrings on as well. For those that aren't watching us on YouTube, you'll be listening to us on whatever your favorite platform is. They are the most beautiful, I want to say tassels, but that sounds tacky. They're just beautiful orange dangly earrings, and they look amazing.
One of the ladies in my lovely community yesterday said to me, I said, "Oh, are you joining then?" Because she was raving about it, and she said, "Well, if it means saving the world in fabulous earrings, then count me in."
I love that. Absolutely love it.
Like,
yeah, I'm down with that. Yeah, I need to get the memo for the fabulous earrings, don't I? And I have got some fabulous earrings. I'm terrible. I always forget my jewelry. So always forget to put my ring on, forget to put my earrings on. I've got some gorgeous necklaces. I just forget. I'm terrible.
I think you're very focused on the job in hand, right? The making a difference. Like, we ain't got time for
that. Good point. Glad you made it, Lauren. Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us. You're here for the next 3 episodes to tell us all about different things, which I'll introduce as we come into each episode. But today, you are going to share your leadership story with us. So tell me, Lauren, let's get started. Let's dig in. How did you get to where you are today?
Oh, that's a question and a half, isn't it? Well, as you mentioned, I started my career in wedding photography and loved it. And I did it for 10 years. I still have a couple of weddings left this year, but I have wrapped up taking inquiries. And the reason being is that I found then brand photography about 6 years ago, which enabled me to work with incredible women in business. I could see how incredible they were, but they couldn't see it. And that made me deeply sad. And it set me on this path of really wanting to work with women to reconnect with themselves, to untame themselves. So one of my favorite books is Glennon Doyle's Untamed. And I think that it is like, we are so conditioned by expectations, external expectations, not even our own, by society, by our family, by our friends. We have all these expectations on us to be a certain thing, to be a certain way. And we've lost ourselves somewhere along the line. And actually, it's only when we are, as Glennon Doyle would say, full of ourselves, that we are able to create the change in the world that we really want to be able to create. It's when we feel full of ourselves that we begin to feel significant, to feel valuable. You know, if we're going through life in this pleasing everybody else kind of motivation, we lose ourselves entirely. And I could see that in these women that I was working with. So I would help them to build their confidence by taking great photos. I would help them to understand who they are in their business, what they want their business to do. And I started really working quite deeply with them. I wouldn't just show up and do a shoot. I would do like a big strategy meeting beforehand where I'd really get to know them personally. And that grew then when obviously the pandemic hit, and my business had to pivot because I couldn't take photos anymore. And I essentially was I'd already been doing the visibility coaching in terms of building the confidence, figuring out how to show up online, how to use your photos, how to create content around your photos. So I pivoted and I started to do that work. And that kind of allowed me to accidentally discover my purpose. Which was, I literally remember the moment. I'd started the Facebook community, which is my heart and soul. And I started at the beginning of lockdown because I had this kind of extra capacity to help people. I was living with my mum-in-law at the time. We were saving to buy a house. So I didn't have like the massive financial freak out that everybody had, which was completely understandable. But it meant that because I had this extra capacity, I thought, well, how can I help other people? How can I extend myself to create a space where people can learn and grow and feel safe and, you know, explore themselves and all of this lovely stuff. And the community started to take off. But it wasn't quite like, I know that vulnerability is what allows us to really deeply connect with ourselves and with others. And yes, I know it's this big, scary thing, but it also leads to so much growth and opportunity and possibility. So I wanted to create a more vulnerable space. Now I thought, well, how can I get these guys talking to each other in a more meaningful way? Because nobody ever learned a damn thing from small talk.
No.
Small talk could be thrown in the bin for all I'm concerned. We just don't get anywhere with it. Like deep conversations, like bare your soul to me, show me who you are and where you come from and why you do the things you do. That's the stuff I really love to talk about, and it's what we love to talk about in Affinity. And I thought, how can I get them talking about more of this stuff? So I thought, well, what about like face-to-face online networking, right? So people can actually have conversations. They can feel the energy of the person. They can feel a bit safer with them and get to know each other deeper. And I think I was in the second session of networking, and I went, holy crap, this is it. This is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm a community builder. I'm a connector of people. I could feel my cup being so filled up by it. And I've got goosebumps just talking about it. And I just knew that that's what I was supposed to be doing. But it only happened accidentally, and I've backtracked. So I've like, how did I get there so I can help other people get there? I've backtracked, and I realized that the reason I got there is because every single decision I made in my career, in my business, was in alignment with my personal values. So of course, values and purpose go hand in hand, don't they? So the wedding photography was about bringing joy to people, helping people feel comfortable, giving them a really great service. And then the brand photography was about helping people drop inside and really reconnect with themselves and feel confident and show themselves to the world unapologetically. And then, of course, the community was about support and bringing people together. And then the networking was just that on a whole other level. So every single decision brought me closer to my purpose. But it's funny when I was thinking about what we talk about in this podcast, I was thinking about how leadership was never something I wanted. Like, I didn't strive for it. I never wanted to be in charge. And I actually have actively pushed against it with my community. I've said for the longest time, it's only recently, and I know we'll get more into that in episode 3 with a pivotal moment, which I can't wait to get my teeth into. It's only recently that I've been able to accept it. And I've done some personal work to get to that point. But I would always say, well, I'm not the leader, because I didn't like this idea of hierarchy. I didn't want to feel like I was elevated in comparison to others. I wanted us to all be in it together. I wanted to be, holding people's hands and moving forward. And essentially that's what good leadership is.
Oh, no, it's so interesting hearing you chat. And if you don't mind me interjecting for a minute, Lauren, a couple of things that you've said there. One, I'll just sort of say about the origins of leadership, if you like, that more traditional view where it does feel hierarchical, that, I should be the top of this, a senior leader in an organization and have all these people reporting to me. So it's not like that. If we're not leading ourselves in our own lives, who is leading us? So stripping it right back to the basics, we've got to start with ourselves and build that foundation to lead ourselves forwards before we can ever think about any of the other stuff that might come with that. And for you, leading yourself in your own business and how you do that. So that was the first sort of thing that came to mind to share.
Just to respond to that before you go into the next thing, I'm smiling so hard because I've just realized that I was always doing that. I literally just said it, right? I was talking about these women who have been led by external factors, and I wanted them to take their own ownership of that. So I just had a light bulb moment of, I've always been doing that. Right. Okay.
Absolutely. And, it's so lovely to hear you say that, because the other bit that I was going to talk about was, when you were saying it was something like, helping these women to almost reframe, I forget the exact words, but to reframe how they look at themselves. And, a lot of the mentoring work that I do is exactly that. It's women that have really struggled to find their own identity, is actually probably the best way to say it. So they're so driven by the expectations of others. So mum and dad expecting them to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist, or something that pays really big bucks, at the expense of their own happiness. And again, expecting them to get married to somebody wealthy, whether they love them or not. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And it's really about helping them to start putting themselves first, and that notion isn't selfish, and it's not at the exclusion of the feelings of others around them. It's about building their confidence in explaining why they want to do these things and why it serves them personally, and that it's their life and they can own it, and that they do have those choices. I talk so much about choice, and a lot of people will just say, well, no, there is no choice, I have to do this. There's always a choice, but there may be one choice, maybe a lot harder, and you may have to sacrifice a lot more to choose that path to get to where you want eventually. So, there's so much in this, and I'm no psychologist by any means, but I've done a lot of work with a lot of women and guys, and, men as well, on this kind of stuff. And it really helps people to believe in themselves, therefore, right back to the basics, be able to lead themselves in the direction that they choose. So it's incredible.
Just going to come back to something you said about choice, because this is a huge deal for me. So I made a choice when I was 15. Long story short, both of my parents struggled in life. My dad especially was probably undiagnosed bipolar and attempted suicide many times. So I had quite a difficult childhood, and I felt like an invisible child. And I was sat on the swings when I was 15, and I had this moment of, if I just disappeared right now, nobody would even notice. And I genuinely 100% believed it in my bones. But I had this moment, I thought about who my parents are, and that actually they're not perfect beings, because nobody is. And then there was a sort of a moment of letting go, I think, of the expectation that I had on them to be perfect parents. And in that moment, I realized that the trajectory that my life was putting me on, if you have no choice, right? If you think you have no choice, then you just follow the path that you've been placed upon. It was going to lead me down this road of being a very sad, very lonely, very unconfident, probably quite unsuccessful because of those things person. But in that moment, and I remember it so clearly, it was one of my pivotal moments, I suppose. I decided I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be something else. And I the way I describe it, very visual. I stepped out of the trajectory that my life was on. Must stop using that word. I can barely say it. Trajectory. I stepped out and I chose something else. And, this is why I'm here now, because of that moment of choice. And it reminded me when you were talking about it that, like, a lot of people do believe they have no choice. Or it's not even that they believe they have no choice. They just don't see that they have a choice, so they just continue going and going the way that their path is taking them. They go with the flow, which is a term I've come to loathe, actually. I just go with the flow. Don't go with the flow. No, direct the flow. It's your life.
Exactly. Bring focus to the flow that you choose. There
exactly.
You go.
But it made me think of this beautiful book called Women That Run with the Wolves. I don't know if you've read it.
I know. I've not read it yet.
It's fantastic. So I had it on Audible, and it ended, and I was like, what? Why is there not more of this? It's very short. That's the only criticism I have of it. I wanted more. Anyway, so the author is talking about choice, and she talks about how if you haven't done the work on yourself, if you haven't really reconnected with you believe you only have one choice. You believe that your life is what your life is. But if you become more aware of yourself, you realize you have three choices. One of them is to go with the flow, to just go with everybody else's expectations. The other one is to rebel against that, which also doesn't serve you.
No.
And then the third one, of course, is to do what serves you, is to choose your own path. So it's not even that you have two choices, you have three choices in the situation when it comes to deciding what your life looks like. And I think that's such a brilliant lesson.
I love that idea of being able to direct that choice to serve you. We often talk about, in coaching, ditch the things that no longer serve you, because whether it's a difficult and toxic relationship, whether it's a job that's again difficult or toxic, because we've all faced difficult and toxic situations at work over our careers. I certainly have a couple of times over my many years of work. Don't give away my age. Anyway, so it is so interesting, and it's vast, and you talk about three choices, but of course within choosing that choice that serves you, there'll always be multiple choices within that as well. So the possibilities are only limited by our own lens of the world.
Exactly.
Really,
write that down somewhere.
yeah. It really is incredible, Lauren, and what I always find is that and we get this in boundless amounts within the Affinity community, is being able to talk to other women who have either struggled themselves or are coming out the other side, whatever point we're at in our own experiences, is helpful to somebody else who's further back and want to be where we are now, no matter where we are in our journey, and talking things through. I often describe my coaching as thought partnership. We never make time to think about what we're doing and how we're doing it, because we're so busy going from this meeting now to the next meeting, and I've had no time in between, barely to nip to the ladies and grab another glass of water, never mind thinking about the outputs of the previous meeting and setting out time for when I'm going to take action on those. Excuse me, and then prepare for the meeting that's coming next. You get it. We're on this kind of hamster wheel that's just constantly going. So when do we make time to think about those amazing choices and opportunities that are in front of us?
Yeah, it comes back to what I said, where some people don't even realize they have that choice. I wanted to mention, actually, because You just reminded me when you said about the thought partnership. It was actually one of our thought partnership sessions that you came up with the name for my business. Remember, like Affinity wouldn't be Affinity literally if it wasn't for you and your thought partnership. Like there's so much opportunity for growth, for insight, for exploration in conversation, right? Like this, it's so powerful to speak to other people and learn from them. And something else I was going to say that sort of comes back to what we were saying earlier about sort of choosing the path that serves you and honoring self, because I think this is quite important, is that we think, because you mentioned, you touched upon it, how people think that's selfish, right? And that seems like the obvious thing, like, oh, well, if you're going to be all about you, then that's quite selfish. But actually, honoring self isn't about being all about you. It's about making sure that you light yourself up so that you can light others. And what I talk about a lot in Affinity is celebrating ourselves and celebrating others. Because if we cannot celebrate ourselves and shine our light with the world, then we're not going to achieve the goals that we want to achieve, for starters. And secondly, the wonderful side effect of lighting yourself up, celebrating yourself, honoring yourself, is that when you do that, you create a space around you for other people to do that.
Yes.
It doesn't make people feel small. It makes people feel full. Like it gives them that permission to fill themselves up, to celebrate themselves. And that is, I mean, in terms of leadership, I think that's or not even just leadership, just in general, that's a really beautiful gift to give people around you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That word permission that you use there is so powerful, because it is about giving yourself permission. And so many people don't think they can, or it doesn't even occur to them that it's an issue that they haven't given themselves permission to do something. So, we talk about limiting beliefs in coaching, and that can be something that's massively limiting. If you cannot give yourself permission to shine and light up. And you know what? Not that we do it for just because we want to feel good, but the knock-on effect of lighting yourself up first, of course, but then being able to light up others. It's infectious. It's absolutely incredible, because it's just a gift, isn't it? Being able to lift each other up and help each other shine, help each other grow, help each other notice those choices that we've got. I mean, it's just an incredible feeling. And I've got this lovely warm glow inside of me just now as we're having this conversation, Lauren. And, I often get that when we have our chats, and it's just fantastic, because I know I'm talking to somebody who feels utterly the same as me, and it's lovely. And we need more of that feeling to spread in the world.
Definitely. Coming back to what you said about permission, I think that just, for your listeners, if there is anybody that's in that position of, well, how do you get to that point of giving yourself permission? I think that the first port of call, is to think about where you are already looking for permission. So where are you putting your stock, essentially? I think so many of us look outside of ourselves for reassurance, for permission, for validation. We are looking outside of ourselves for our own identity, which is bonkers when you think about it like that. So you can start to see where you are looking for it to begin with, and you can start to switch things around and actually bring it home.
Yeah, and I think I'd build on that a little bit, Lauren, and say, why? Ask yourself why you're looking for that permission from somebody else. What's stopping you giving yourself the permission? And I know that's pretty deep stuff for everybody, but something for you to take away and have a little think about. And there's lots of us out there that can help you to do that, if that's something that is beneficial to you. But again, you've got a choice. So I'll just leave that sitting there. So what about your sort of early days in terms of, you know, how did you get into photography, things like that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was thinking about sort of like moments that I've had through my career, and I suppose the first one was when I was at university, I worked at a place called Bar Heat, which was like the university bar basically. And in the second year, all the first year students got to then go for promotion. So a lot of people went to become duty managers, and everybody was really shocked when I didn't. And I didn't want to be in charge. I had no desire to be in charge of people. It was not something that appealed to me at all. And then I realized why, because my friends who then got promoted became. Am I allowed to swear?
She's pulling faces for anyone listening.
They became like monstrous versions of themselves. It was like the power just went to their heads, and they just turned into different people. And then the next thing that then occurred to me was when I was working at an IT company after I'd finished uni, and I literally was just employed to answer the phones. And within 6 months, they said, we'd like to promote you to service desk manager. And I was like, oh, oh, okay. Again, it wasn't something I sought. It wasn't something that I wanted to be in charge of people. So it isn't something that's ever really been on my radar as an intention or a goal. It's something that I naturally fell into with Affinity. But I think that in terms of leadership, I have always started with self-leadership. Like, I've always made my own choices. I've always been fiercely independent. And you asked about the photography. Now, the reason I got into photography was because I retrained when I was about 27, 28, and I did a 3D design course, so glass and ceramics. And they taught us a little bit of photography on the side, just so we could take photos of the things we'd made, basically. And then I went traveling, and I fulfilled all of the cliches of going traveling to find yourself, because I was 28 and I was like, Lauren, you're 28 now. You need to decide what you want to be when you grow up, because I just kind of floated through life at that point.
I'm still deciding, by the way, what I want to be when I grow up. No.
I will never grow up.
I'm never going to grow up. That's the first thing to say. But secondly, I am right where I want to be. That's
right now, right? Exactly. Now. But open to evolution, because that's
absolutely.
Oh, love that. So anyway, I went traveling and I took a camera with me, and I was like, oh, do I want to be a potter or a photographer? Camera in hand, photographing people, places, landscapes. The rest was history. Like, I just absolutely fell in love with it. And what I found with my wedding photography, I was a natural leader, because I had no problem standing on a chair or a wall saying, hey, everybody, look over here, like entertaining people, organizing people, and it's just something that it seems comes naturally to me. And I don't know that I've really given myself enough credit for the sort of natural abilities that I have. But so much of it comes down to that choice that I made when I was 15. I didn't want to be that sad, lonely girl. I wanted to be something else. And so I did.
So all I'll say is thank goodness that you made that choice, because I don't think we'd be having this conversation today. And, so many of us don't have that inner strength to recognize what's going on for us, especially at 15 years old. Now, I think actually my daughter, who's 16, I would say she's got that inner strength. She's made of really strong stuff. But there aren't many 15-year-olds that would be able to make such a self-aware decision for themselves. That choice, again, it comes back to choice, doesn't it? And be able to carry that forward. So I am delighted for you, Lauren, that's what's brought you to where you are now.
Can I know we need to probably wrap it up
soon.
Okay. Like we could forever. Lucky we've got a couple more episodes to record, but
so much to talk about.
I just wanted to respond to that, because this might be helpful, and it's something I share a lot. So I've had lots of therapy in my life for various things, mostly around my dad's suicide. He took his life when I was 24, and I had EMDR therapy. And I was speaking to my therapist, Hubert, a lovely, lovely man from Cameroon, and he said to me, I feel like I should be diagnosing you with complex PTSD because I'd gone through all of the traumatic events and difficulties that I'd had. But I don't think you've got complex PTSD. I think you've got PTG. And I was like, what the hell's that? And he said,
Yeah.
post-traumatic growth. And I was like, I will take that one, please. That sounds much better. And he said, I think that you have developed two fantastic, healthy coping strategies for through all the experiences that you've gone through. And the first one is compassion for self and compassion for others. And the other one is radical deep self-acceptance and acceptance of others. So there's this understanding that other people have their own things that they're going through, that other people are not here for us. Everybody is just walking their path and they're doing the best they can. And I think that when we remove that sort of blame mentality of, my parents screwed me up, when we remove that, we bring the power back to us. We get to choose. We're allowed to be something different then. And that's what happened in that moment when I was 15. I let go of the expectations of my parents, and I realized that I was no longer an extension of them, that I was my own individual person, and that I got to choose how I felt about all the things that had happened to me. And I think that I wanted to share that because I think for me that was hugely powerful. And if there is anybody that's listening that's in a similar sort of situation, then hopefully that can help you with a bit of a reframe.
Yeah, fantastic reframe, Lauren. And I think being able to, as I would put it, step into your own power is just, goosebumps as we're talking about this, is hugely fulfilling. I don't think there's any other way to say it, not for me at this moment. And again, it comes back to all the bits we've talked about, making the right choice for you, giving yourself permission, because no one else should be allowed to have that power over you to give you that permission. This is up to you. And if you need help in doing that for yourself, then please, please, please come seek some help. I would love to help you. And there are plenty of other people out there too that would love to help you, because leading self comes first before you think about anything else, leading anybody else or anything else. You've got to be able to lead you first. You are the most important thing in all of this, in your own life. It's your life. Live it to the fullest is what I would say.
Nice. So
Oh, well, look, this has been amazing, and we could just keep going. But we are so lucky because we've got Lauren for another couple of episodes. So next week we are going to be talking about Lauren's take on game and leadership. Do they go together? Don't they? What's it all about in terms of how Lauren's thinking about it? And as you know, all of our guests come up with something totally different, which is just fascinating and a huge part of why I love doing this. But Lauren, it has been, fascinating is the right word, talking to you today. Thank you for sharing, all of you. I love it and really appreciate it. And I can't wait to talk to you again next week.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're an inspiration, Paula. Honestly, I always get something new out of having conversations with you. Whether it's a business name or a light bulb moment, there's always just something wonderful that comes out of our conversations.
Likewise, Lauren. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Today, we listen to the leadership journey of our guest and how they got to be where they are today. Now, in the chats, we talked about all sorts of different things, and there are lots of bits and pieces in there that are going to mean something different to each and every one of you. You will all have your own unique takeaways, so I encourage you to do a bit of reflection now and see what this might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and I look forward to seeing you on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders next week. Bye for now.